Hello, everyone.
We are back. It is time for the power forward list. We have already done the center list. If you haven't checked it out, you can check it out right over here. There's a card on the top of the screen. If you
That
haven't
way,
already,
that way, somewhere.
if you haven't already, like, subscribe. Definitely means a lot to us. We're going to get right into our power forward list. Number 25. Who do we got?
Over at number 25, we've got PJ Washington from
PJ
Washington.
Washington. Not from Washington, from Charlotte.
No, Charlotte. I know.
That's going to
It
look
would have
great,
been nice though.
right?
But no. He's pretty good. Pretty good young player.
Yeah.
Young guy.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're a rookie and you actually come in and you're not picked in the first, top 10 and you put up 12 and 5, 12 and 6, I
Yeah.
mean, it's not you could complain about. The fact he was even starting or getting that caliber of minutes, I mean, that alone
Well, luckily he was on Charlotte.
that definitely plays a huge factor into it. But I mean, he looked good, right? He wasn't inefficient in many spots. I mean, even from three as a power forward, he thought shot 37%. So, was he taking 4 or 5 attempts per game? No, but I mean, still, it's an efficient rate, right? Like he's not taking shots he shouldn't. I believe
Yeah.
free throw shooting has to work on it a bit, but again, a young guy, he's already a decent rebounder. Like I said, had that kind of 12 and 5 year. Could hopefully only go up from here. I mean, if we see like a 14 and 7 from PJ Washington, that's good progression. Maybe slowly goes into like the finishes 16-7, 16-8, maybe even a guy like David West. So it could be a decent career for PJ Washington. He was well coached in college, obviously played for a good school. So
See, I for one, I hope that he proved everything you just said right because he beat out a couple people that I didn't think he was going to beat out. People that were a little more esteemed on defense, a little more respected throughout the league. But it does goes to show just how good of a year he had last year. And if he didn't have that good of a year, he wouldn't be in this conversation. For example, people that didn't make our list are people like PJ Tucker, Marcus Morris, Derek Favors. The guy went 11 and 10 last year, and every year before that at power forward he went 15 and 8, 15 and 9. These are names that are we know what they're going to bring. We I still I hope that we PJ Washington brings another year like this, and if he does, then he does definitely warrant a spot in here. But if he does regress at all, then he'll lose a spot out of this list for sure.
yeah, I mean, Favors last year, right, he did drop a bit. I mean, I think he was 9.8. He was under 10 points and I think under 10 rebounds as well. And that's the thing with Favors. He is kind of likely through that prime of his career on that downslope. And if it's who's the better player, of course, Derek Favors is probably the better overall player. But because it's a list going into this year of who's going to have the better year, I think it's kind of fair to assume PJ Washington's probably going to have a better overall year than Derek Favors, no matter where Charlotte finishes, and that kind of justifies his spot. We'll finish on Washington before we go back to a couple of these other guys, but I mean, we talked about Charlotte, how again they could even be maybe in the run potentially for one of those playoff seeds, especially with the playoff tournament coming in too. So again, they have a good system around them. He fits in really well for power forward. They obviously got rid of some players who made it gave him some minutes for that, whether it's Batum or whoever it may be. But again, now they have a good starting five with the Ball or Rozier, whoever they want to go with Graham, with Hayward, with Washington, and then whoever they decide to run at center, whether it be Zeller or Biombo, probably Zeller, obviously. But again, he fits in good. He'll get his minutes, he'll get his shots, and I really think he could only go up from there.
Yeah, no, he'll definitely hit his shots. He's shown that he can score at the NBA level, which is difficult to do for anyone. That team's definitely going to be a lot better this year. And if he can be even if he can be the same player but on a winning team, that'll bring him up in the rankings.
For sure. And going back to those guys we spoke about. So I know you mentioned a very defensively minded guy who you're pretty passionate about. So PJ Tucker missed the list. I believe he finished 27th, I believe, for us. You had him in your list at 21st. I had him outside my list. Actually outside or around the top 30 mark. PJ Tucker, why do you think he deserved the spot?
He's one of the best defenders in the league. That's the only thing about it. He last year always defends the best player, whether it be LeBron James, whether it be a center, whether it be a power forward, point guard. We all know Harden can't defend for shit, so Tucker really fills those holes. He can hit the three at an efficient rate. He's the ultimate role player. To me, he's an older version, but a harder nosed Iguodala. He's a great player at what he does. He does what he needs to do for the team. That team's always been a top 3 seed ever since he's been there. And the fact that he's not in the top 25 goes to show that it is a fairly deep position when compared to other positions in the league. That even though he is a valuable starter, he'll still continue to be a valuable starter. But I hate that he's not in the list. But I definitely think that he deserves our respect over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I would say over his span, like even I would say last year, I think if we're making this list, I think he probably makes it. And I think a couple guys on this list, like PJ Washington and a couple guys that we're going to see, maybe jumped up and they were a bit of a surprise because again, like Washington was picked outside the top 10. For him to even have a decent year where he maybe even put up 6 and 4 and he just looked decent, I think was maybe more expected of him. And then again, like you said, he actually found a way to score at the NBA level, which is the hardest thing for rookies. But again, to Tucker, the reason he really missed my list was the fact that, yes, I know he's one of the best defenders, but I feel like there's a lot of good defenders in the NBA realistically where they could defend most guys. Yes, of course, there's guys who are eventually going to burn them, but for the most part, they're decent caliber guys. Again, like Washington, like guys we're going to see. And with that, too, Tucker offensively, he could really only do one thing. I mean, he hits the corner three, and that's really all he could do on the offensive end.
That's all they ask him to do.
Yeah, of course, but like you said, that's a role player, and there's 25 guys, or 20, even 26 with Marcus Morris, who are more than a role player at this point, I would say. And that's where ultimately I would pick any of the guys ahead of him over Tucker going into this year if I was a general manager. But he's a great fit for Houston, even maybe again at small forward, where I would prefer him. He has more of a chance to make a list where, like you said, it might be power forward just very deep. But even with Tucker too, like his 3-pointer, it's the first year that I believe he was under 38% in a few years last year. He was 35%. Who knows, that trend could keep going down. It's good for him. He finally got his free throw percentage up. He was shooting in around the high 60s, low 70s for a number of years. Got it up to 80 last year. If he does that again next year, great for him. But like I said, on the offensive end, he really only does one thing for you. And I think having maybe a great defender versus a good defender doesn't make PJ Tucker better than any of these guys.
If we're saying that, then we're saying that Houston is a 55-win team only because of Harden.
I mean, they didn't look like a bad team at all before they got PJ Tucker. I mean, he hasn't been there the whole time that James Harden.
No.
And they weren't necessarily struggling with that. He just added an element to them.
He adds a certain element. I think he's, to be honest, one of the best defenders in the league.
And how about
I think that puts him high in my list on its own right.
And how about Marcus Morris? I think we both actually had him like in that 26th spot. I think I actually had him 25th, or I might have just moved him down last minute, and same with yourself. A guy who pretty much put up 20 per game for most of last year, and he misses our list. How do you think that happens? Because again, I think in our small forward list, we're going to see 20 points per game. That could seem very high.
Very, very high, right? Well, I think it's just his second half. He didn't show that he was that consistent 20-point per game player throughout the whole season. If he would have been able to display that, then he would be much higher. But he dropped significantly in that second half. I don't even know if he's going to be starting this year, where he's going to find his minutes. He's going to find minutes for sure, and he's going to put up points for sure. But he just needs to be more consistent with it.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the nail there. With the second half of the season, I would say is more reminiscent to who Marcus Morris has been throughout his career. Where even in Boston, again, he had the ball a lot, he got the ball a lot, he shot a lot of threes, and he was never the top scorer. And I mean, that's for a reason, where he's more so like a 14, kind of maybe 15-point per game guy, and he's like just almost like a role player, good 6-man, maybe your fourth option kind of thing. And yeah, he scored at a good rate, like you said, for the Knicks at the start of last year. But I mean, it was the New York Knicks. They had no one else to really shoot the ball, or who even essentially wanted to shoot. The offense was very based around Marcus Morris. Good for him. But yeah, I don't think
Julius Randle put up 21.
Yeah, and again, we'll see him later on this list too. But yeah, for me, Marcus Morris is just a guy who, other than kind of shooting the mid range and being able to stretch the floor, doesn't have that much value to his game. And yeah, he's a good player if you have him, and especially if you have him on your bench. But as a top 3 or 4 guy, I just don't see his purpose really.
And he could easily prove us wrong, because if he puts up another 20 points per game year,
Oh,
then
absolutely.
he's laughing at us.
Absolutely. If he puts up 20 for an entire year, he would definitely get a spot on our list. But moving on, again, we're actually going to have a guy who had statistically much less significant year than Marcus Morris. Who do we have?
At number 24, we have Brandon Clarke. I think he's just high because he's Canadian, and well, I don't know, we're Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing you actually
Bias?
maybe, but the funny thing you actually said that is I actually had no idea that Brandon Clarke was Canadian. For whatever reason, I just actually did not see that when going through the list, and
No?
still put him on there. To me, it was the fact that he had a team with guys like Jaren Jackson, and he still found a way to find minutes to score, like you said, and he was a rookie, and he wasn't a highly drafted rookie either. Like Washington, scored at a pretty efficient rate, especially for a big guy. His field goal percentage was actually one of the best. I think for guys who took at least 8 shots at his position, it was actually the best field goal percentage. Yes, the next guy on that list took 15 shots, so Clarke, big difference there. But again, among guys who took at least 8 shots, bench players, role
Yeah.
players, whatever, Brandon Clarke was the best in terms of efficiency, and he shoots the three well. Yes, it's a guy who is able to get to the net, but I believe he shot the three at 38% as well. So it's clearly a guy who's going to be able to keep scoring at the NBA level, I think. Already a decent rebounder. Again, found a way to score on a team where he shouldn't have found a way to score on because they already have so many options. And we'll really see what Brandon Clarke does, but I really like him on as a like 6-man option for them when Jaren Jackson's having those off nights.
Yeah, he's so young too, right? He's got so much future ahead of him. That was his rookie year. How many guys are we going to talk about in this list, or have we already, that have rookie years where they went 12-6, 13-6? These are guys that in their second, third year they could be going 19-9. They could easily be a top 10, top 15 player at that position in the league.
Yeah,
No, he's definitely got a good future.
definitely. And really the only thing holding him back is, like I said, just how deep that team is. But I mean, who knows? Maybe
Opportunity.
exactly. Who knows? Maybe they find a way. They get rid of Anderson. They get rid of Winslow eventually. Maybe one of Jackson or Clarke moves to small forward, and they end up running a kind of different lineup there. Clarke is a much better rebounder than Jackson Jr. already, and Jackson Jr. shoots 40% from the three. So I mean, we could definitely maybe see him transition to more of a small forward-based role, and Clarke again maybe take that 4 spot and. We might get to see a big improvement for him. I don't think it'll happen this year, but I just mean over the
I
long.
think they're actually going to be 4-5. I don't think they're going 3-4. I don't think people are going back into quicker positions. I think these guys are going to be a 4 and a 5 in the league. I think JV is eventually going to come off the bench. I
Interesting.
think that's where their future is. But I think we're going to see another name that we just talked about a little higher on this list that we have a pretty high esteem for as well.
Definitely interesting concept with JV there, but hopefully for Brandon Clarke, like Washington, continues along this path, continues to improve, proves us right with this spot on this list, and we'll just continue with there. Good old Canadian kid. Hopefully,
12 points in 22 minutes.
exactly. Hopefully, we could get you on somehow. Again, no idea he's Canadian. Where's he from?
Vancouver.
Oh, BC. Oh, now we got the struggle. No local connections, but if someone knows Brandon Clarke, get us in touch because we value you. You're 24th on our power forward list already. No, you're good. We got a pop-up from Zoom saying they removed the 40 limit group limit as we were talking about Brandon Clarke. So it is now mandatory for someone to get Brandon Clarke because there's no more 40-minute group limit.
We can get him on. We can get him on. We can get anyone on.
Exactly. Thank you, Zoom. If anyone from Zoom is watching this, we appreciate your great.
Someone must be. I know.
Exactly.
They're listening to us.
That was some scary Apple shit.
Moving on past Brandon Clarke, right after this, we have a player that I'm actually gonna take my shirt off because he is one of my favorite players, and I sadly should have got him higher on this list, especially considering that I've been watching him his whole career. For me, he was right up there with LeBron for most of his career. If you guys don't know who I'm talking about yet, we got number 7 in the New York Knicks, no longer number 7 in the New York Knicks, Carmelo Anthony.
Carmelo Anthony.
Down she goes.
There you
go. I can't get this shirt off.
Live blooper.
Okay.
Carmelo Anthony of the no longer New York Knicks. Ooh, is that Carmelo himself?
No, no, no. It's just me. Don't worry. Just practicing.
End video. Not excited. Carmelo Anthony at number 23,
What
Portland.
a stud.
Yeah, I mean, a guy over his year who transitioned into the more power forward route, where he could still definitely play small forward, but I mean, Carmelo at the mid range, I mean, who better is there almost?
Probably the only person that's better in the mid range is DeMar DeRozan in
Maybe
this whole league.
Durant, maybe. Yeah, other than those two.
Maybe. But no, Carmelo, he's good at a few things. He does his job. He still plays fairly good defense. He's not as mobile as he used to be, but he doesn't need to be. He's not that. He's not the star player anymore. He's not even a top 5 player on that team. It's perfect for him. He's going to come off the bench for the first time ever this year. Still going to go into that 15, 16, 17 point per game role. He's going to be essentially Manu Ginobili off the bench. It's great.
So you assume Zach Collins is going to start over him, obviously? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with him, like,
Or Covington starting up and Hood starting at small forward.
possible too.
That's
Possible too.
possible. That's probably more possible than Carmelo starting.
Well, with that being said, we do not have Robert Covington as a power forward. He has not missed the top 25, but at the moment, we do not have him as a power forward. But we do have Carmelo Anthony. I feel like last year, a lot of people forget how much he played. He played 58 games, for one, which I feel like going into it, people think, oh, I played 20 or 30. Again, no, he played pretty much the whole year. Really found a home at Portland, just continued to improve throughout the year. It seemed like no one wanted him. Like you said, found a great spot for himself. And even elements of his game where it's feel like Carmelo almost felt like, oh, he takes a lot of bad threes. He's not that good from three. Shot 38%.
It's not bad.
That's what I mean. That he's a good 3-point shooter, definitely. From the mid range, like we said, even better. For his age, for like you said, his athleticism slowing down, 6.3 rebounds at the power forward, one of the best at the positions actually. So I mean,
Surprisingly,
yeah,
how weak is that?
yeah, but I mean, Carmelo, again, a very good overall player, great for that team. Wouldn't be surprised if we see him put up again 15, 16, maybe even 17 again this year. Maybe might be 14, but in that range, definitely. I really like Carmelo Anthony in this 23rd spot. I think pretty deserved. Maybe a bit of biasism towards his name alone, but again, still a very good player. So
Yeah, and if given the right opportunity, as he's shown last year, he can still put up those solid numbers. If anything, he can actually have a better year than last year potentially. He played even better in OKC. People forget how effective he can be. They look at highlights of him doing some Olay defense, letting a guy blow by him. Go look at Karl Anthony Towns highlights. Like highlights you can pinpoint out of anyone's game. He's still not he's a sound player. He's been in the league for a long time. He knows what to do. He knows his job, and he'll succeed in Portland.
yeah, and it's like game after game. It's not like when games matter, Carmelo doesn't try. I mean, I forget what game it is, but there's a game that he just goes shot for shot with someone, and it's ridiculous. But Carmelo Anthony is just, I mean, to this day, just a pure sniper. If you randomly it would be a surprise if randomly see him go for 40. You see him go for 30. You see him go a few games in a row at 20. Like, yeah, sure, he might get 7 one night, but you know what? You could rest him a night too because it's so old, and you have Collins, you have Jack Layman, sorry. So I mean, or Jack, anyways. But you have Layman. So I mean, the point is, like, you could use Anthony to his full ability, like you said this year. Didn't play much in Houston, pretty much sat out the whole year. Comes back, still looks good. Could even look even better this year.
I completely agree. I think everyone kind of throws some shade on him because he had those couple of years where he wasn't a top 10 player in the league anymore. People just compare him so much to LeBron back when they were in their prime that they keep forgetting that LeBron is not your typical basketball player. When you get into those 30, 32, 33, 34 years old, your skills diminish, your speed diminishes. Most people, your stats go down. He's done a fairly good job being able to keep up his numbers.
Well,
he still does great.
Think about it. The other guys drafted in that draft who were so
There's no one left.
exactly. Dwayne Wade retired. Chris Bosh retired. Carmelo Anthony and LeBron are the only two left. And yeah, sure, LeBron's the better of the two. But again, Carmelo's a great number 2 there.
Just don't compare the man to LeBron, and you look at a great player.
Exactly. Hall of Fame career, whether he wins a
For
title,
sure.
like scoring champion guy who, sure, he didn't win the MVP, but in a different era, who knows? He might have different team. Who knows? He might have. Yeah, Carmelo Anthony, nothing but good things to say. I know you have a Denver jersey too. Would have loved to see that come out.
Oh yeah, I do. I have an original Denver jersey.
Never go
I
wrong
should.
with the Nuggets, but yeah, I mean,
I figured I'd wear his most recent All-Star game.
and yeah, that is fair. And he has a more similar hairstyle to that now. You'd have had to put your hair in some dreads if you went with the 15 for Denver. So that would have been not some not some dreads.
I cut those down a little while ago.
Exactly. But we'll move on from there. Who do we have at 22?
So right after Carmelo Anthony, we have a player who is used to be considered a much higher player in this list as well. A former Defensive Player of the Year, again one of the best defensive players in the whole league, and also one of the best playmaking power forwards in the league, if not the best playmaking power forward in the league, Draymond Green.
Yeah, Draymond Green was a guy for me who, again, it's just so hard to leave him off the list because of the accomplishments that you mentioned. I mean, a former Defensive Player of the Year. It's not like it was 10 years ago, right? It was rather recent. A guy who, yes, I don't think, no, because Gobert won it
Oh
two,
yeah,
and then,
three, four
yeah,
years ago. 4 years ago.
within the last 5 years, he has won. And
Yeah.
I mean, a guy who, yes, he has regressed a bit in areas where he was never the best shooter and he's just gotten essentially worse. But he's still so good at so many elements. I mean, the thumbnail we have him in, of him is him ball handling, and that's because when Steph Curry is not on the floor, he's pretty much a primary ball handler. The guy had 6 assists, 6.5 assists last year, and that's not even his highest total. I mean,
When Steph Curry is on the floor, he's usually the primary ball handler.
yeah, so I mean, he's a guy who has a great IQ for the game, who found a way to obviously develop over time. For his own sake, I hope that he does develop his shooting a bit more. But as bad as last year may look statistically too in terms of efficiency, was he really trying? Was anyone on that team even trying? They knew they weren't going to go far based off the injuries. They knew they had a chance to get a high draft pick that they normally wouldn't get. So I mean, to say Draymond
But
Green last year was given 100, I doubt.
but saying that is the exact issue I have with them.
Very
That's why he was very low on this list compared to some other people. In any given year, do you really think that Hachimura and Dave's Bertans are going to win you a championship over having a player like Draymond Green? No. But he didn't give an effort last year. He was given that opportunity to be a star player, and he pretty much pissed it away and said, I'm not a star player. I don't really care anyways. We'd be a better team if we lose, so fuck it. No, who in their right mind wastes their year age 30, 29 years year? It's just ridiculous to think of.
And I mean, to think of it too, I mean, a guy who was first in assists at his position by a pretty good margin, a guy who was first in steals at his position as well, and he still finishes outside the top 20. How do you finish
But it
first,
wasn't close.
right? How do you finish top two in two key categories and still finish so low on this list? And it's because, like there's just so much lack of effort on the offensive end. Whether it's him in the gym, just be finding a way to be consistent, him finding a way to create more shots, whatever it is. But I mean, a guy in terms of field goal percentage, he was 85th. So I mean, it's not good at all. And again, it's not like excuses like guys like Carmelo or Lauri Markanen who they're taking a lot of mid-range shots and that's where they find their game. And of course, they're going to miss. Like Draymond Green is supposed to get to the net. He's supposed to be a force down there, and
He
he's
misses gimmies.
yeah, like it just makes no sense. And he's not a guy who shoots free throws well either. He's not a guy who shoots the 3-point well. So I just like you just need Draymond Green to step it up. Otherwise, he's just like a guy who, yeah, he could pass the ball and he could get any, like I said, number one in steals, but he's going to find himself in that PJ Tucker where he can only do one thing on offense.
And that's pretty much where he is right now, which is sad to say considering his offensive IQ, his playmaking ability, his defensive anchor ability, his switching off of any position. He's a fantastic player. But yeah, last year just goes to show he could actually have been easily in the top 10 of this list in general, maybe even going higher than that,
Yeah.
just based on his versatility.
Again, yeah, ninth in defensive rebounding. So a guy, again, 3 categories, top 10, first in 2 of them, but then 27% of threes, and he took 3 per game. Like, if you're not a good 3-point shooter, why are you shooting so much? And he just doesn't care. Like, he has a 3-point line. He's like, oh, I might miss, takes it anyway. It's not like he comes close. Like, there's so many airball videos and bad misses of Draymond Green. It's definitely disheartening for what he.
But that team's going to be good this year, and if they are competing, if they do have a great year, he can definitely move himself back higher on this list. He's going to be interesting to see So I definitely don't see him finishing the spot. So it's going to be interesting to see how he is with Curry back, with Wiggins there, with that team kind of put together a little more.
Yeah, it's like you said with Cousins in Houston. He's one guy, whether it's higher or lower, would not finish in the same spot in next year's list.
For sure, 100%. Right after Draymond, we have another guy who I find actually models his game similar to Draymond. A very high energy player who we've seen in the playoffs really shown out in that role player position. But he went above a role player, which is why he finds himself at 21. We have Jeremi Grant.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremi Grant, I believe he's a guy you had higher on your list than me. You had him inside the top 20. I had him actually outside my top 25, which is why he falls. Sorry about that, but for myself personally, it's just a matter of really rebounding. Like for a guy with his size, with his athleticism, with the effort he puts in, I don't understand how you only have 3 rebounds per game. Like he's a great 3-point shooter. Like I assume he's strong for his position. He looks strong for his position, like when he's out there. So I don't get why he just can't grab the ball off the rim. Or yes, I get it. Like I get that you have a great center out there out in Denver who's grabbing rebounds. Who also finished first on our center list. But again, it's not like you don't have the ability. It's not like the opportunity wasn't there for him to just grab the ball more than 3 times per game off the rim. So I hope in Detroit he improves that. And he would definitely make my list if he does. That's just a huge knack for me. Again, I need to see him improve there.
Yeah, no, I definitely see where you're coming from, and he's only had 1 year ever over 3 rebounds per game. He averaged 1 year at 4 rebounds per game. That wasn't this year or the year before, back when he was still with OKC, I believe. For me, I had him high. I do put a lot of thought in the defensive versatility that he brings.
Mm-hmm.
That hard energy, hard nosed player. To me, he's similar to that Draymond and PJ Tucker kind of role, except he's younger. I know he's not the youngest player, but he's younger. He's entering his prime. We're gonna see Griffin a little bit higher on this list today, but I personally think that everyone seems to think that Jeremy Grant's gonna be playing back up to Blake Griffin. I think Blake Griffin move up to center for most games, and Jeremy Grant really gets an opportunity to shine. For me, it might be a lot of recency bias just watching him in the playoffs, but that Denver team did not belong in any of those games, any of those series. And he just showed up every single game. He played hard on every player. He played a similar role to Bam Adebayo, minus the rebounds. I know the rebound is a sad number, which is why he wasn't any higher. But he's probably, as we're moving up this list, he's probably one of the best defensive power forwards that's rated so low. The only reason that he's not any higher, you're right, his rebounding, and he still hasn't showed up that year where he puts up 50 and 20 points per game.
Yeah, I mean, or he doesn't have the passing ability of guys like Bam or like Draymond, but he's always
No.
like a combination of, like you said, a Tucker and Green, where he's very versatile on the defensive end. But again, like Tucker's a really good rebounder too, and he's smaller than Jeremy Grant. Like, I just need Jeremy Grant to get aggressive down in the paint because I know he can, and I could definitely see too, like at least a 15-point per game this year. Like you said too, I don't think you go out and you get all the guys you did of the bench that Jeremy Grant's the best, and you don't have him start because Detroit put a lot of money into their big men down low. So I think, like you said, maybe based on the year Griffin had last year, we'll talk about that later, you do put Jeremy Grant out on the floor because he is much more efficient. Even if he's not starting, he's going to play a lot of minutes. Another guy, again, shot 38% last year, where you think about Jeremy Grant, you don't think of him as a good three-point shooter. Very good three-point shooter. So hopefully Jeremy Grant continues to improve too. Maybe he makes a spot next year in my top 25, probably will. And as long as he makes a spot on both of ours, he will improve because, as mentioned, he was 17 on your list, where a lot of people will probably maybe argue that he does belong.
He could go lower. If like I say, it all depends on if my recency bias I have of him, how well he played in the playoffs. We're gonna see how the bubble has affected a lot of people's rankings. The bubble definitely raised his. It put a lot of spotlight on Denver. I hadn't watched a lot of Denver games before. After watching him play, I realized how great of a defender he is, how great of an overall player he is. But if he improves in certain categories, he can definitely get a lot better. Because the next guy we have on this list over here at number 20 has improved dramatically, has turned into the best 3-point shooter in the league. Like, if Jerami Grant can shoot anywhere near this guy's efficiency, he would be much higher in the list. Davis Bertans averages is their number 20 is ranked power forward. He averages about 8 3-pointers per game, shoots it at 420 efficiency. Great on offense.
Yep. And
could be higher.
Yeah, like you said, it's a similar situation of Jerami Grant, where for a guy who is, I believe he's almost 7 foot, if I'm not mistaken, and he's just, again, not a great rebounder from what we've seen. He was 49th in rebounding for power forwards, only 4.5. But yes, definitely, probably of this entire group, probably the best shooter. A
Yeah.
guy who shoots actually similar to Karl Anthony Towns in our center video. We raved about how good he is as a shooter. So that alone says a bunch about Davis Bertans. Obviously, learned a lot in his Popovich system, knows how to get open, knows how to find his shots, and even with another power forward on the team, still found a way to make an impact. He'll probably keep doing that. Very good role player for Washington. Anyone who has Davis Bertans could find a way to benefit from him clearly. I hope he shoots at this efficiency for a while, because it could really make him kind of like almost like a Mehmet Okur, where he is very valuable for a number of years just because he is such a good shooter, especially for his size, and he knows how to get open. So, yeah, Davis Bertans, other than his rebounding, I don't have a lot bad to say, to be honest.
And he got paid. Got paid hard.
Yeah, and
20 mil per year. Good on him.
hopefully that doesn't decline, but he'll definitely still have a chance to play. I mean, Washington didn't make any significant moves up front that would harm him. So I would definitely think that he's going to continue to find a spot. He's definitely, like I said, going to shoot the ball a lot. If I'm Washington, as much as I would like someone to shoot less than 8 times a game from three, if he's shooting. Yeah, I mean, he's shooting at a 42% rate. I mean,
keep shooting.
Exactly. If anything, giving the ball more at this point. But yeah, Davis Bertans, good on him, because going into it, probably not a guy who I would think would make a top 25. And then you really look into it, and it's like, wow, you're actually the best shooter of an entire position. Great for you.
He might be one of the best shooters in the whole league, to be honest, outside of maybe Steph Curry, who hasn't really played in the last couple of years. He's put up numbers that we haven't seen before, given on his how many he attempts per game. People might throw someone like Trae Young, but he, at his height, it's unheard of.
Yeah, I think Towns, well, did Towns not have 8.2 attempts? And he was also about 42% or 41. So they're similar there, but
right up there together, the same level. My same knock on Towns, though, is one knock I have on Bertans is his. We talk about rebounding. Towns is a great rebounder, but it's not that. For me, it's his defense.
Right.
For me, the defense is one of the reasons why Washington wasn't a playoff team last year, even though Beal had the best year of his career. But I really do like the move of Westbrook going there. I can see Westbrook moving in there. Westbrook doesn't take shit from no one. Westbrook won't sit there and just be. You miss someone, he will let you up for it. You don't go hard at practice, he will let you up for it. He is a professional. He is something that they've been missing a little bit. Someone to light a fire under their asses on defense. I think that someone like Bertans is definitely gonna be in a better position for it. I'm also thinking of someone back like over at center, Thomas Bryant. I can see him being a better defender because of it as well. I think that Westbrook, he might not be the best overall player himself, but he's had that no shit attitude. Someone that like Butler has, like Paul has, where they are always on winning teams. So I definitely do think that Bertans, if he can keep his kind of efficiency and keep his points up to anywhere close to his level, and if he raises his defense, he's actually going to go and jump a lot of the guys on this list.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. Defensive consistencies, like I guess because he's not the most athletic guy, that's what a lot of it may come down to as well. But at the same time, like I don't think he's not like I think he's probably a pretty smart defender. It's just like I said, maybe a difficulty for him. It's going to be keeping up with certain guys. But yeah, guy we already said shoots at the rate of Karl Anthony Towns, and if you shoot as good as the best center in the league, I mean, what else could you ask for?
No, exactly, and he'll fit that team very well. I think Washington's going to be a great team this year. People are talking that they blew up, but no, they got better. Talking about Washington, the great thing about the list we made, Bertans is actually a backup. Bertans didn't start last year, so the player we have on top of him just so happens to be his teammate, Hachimura.
Roy,
Great.
is it Rui or Roy? People are probably gonna come at us in the comment section like they did
Rui, I think.
Rui.
Rui.
But
Rui.
either way, again, another rookie on this list. I believe our highest rookie, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so a guy coming in number 19, actually top 20 as a rookie. Just a guy who really feels like a true power forward, like the old school, just get out of the way, find his way to get in there, just super grimy, knows how to play the post, doesn't care about bumping guys around, and that's really why myself I love Hachimura. It just when I think of power forward, it's just that's a guy who I want.
What are the opposite of Bertans, right?
Yeah,
Same player, but opposite players at the same time. Same team, but opposite players for sure.
yeah,
It's crazy.
definitely. Yeah, and I mean a guy too who's only going to improve on both ends of the floor. We might not see his point totals jump huge numbers, but I mean already a guy put up 6.1 rebounds last year. That's not going to go down. He's definitely going to keep improving as a rebounder. Already a really good free throw shooter, hit 82% last year, which again for power forward, great, especially for a guy who's not known as a great shooter. Didn't shoot the three very well, only 28% on 3.8 or 1.8 attempts. Another area he
But
can
he still attempts at least.
exactly.
He's not afraid of it. He's not shying from it. Even though he's not even a shooter, he's more a defensive player. The fact that he's out there and taking those shots whenever they're available to him, it's great on him.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like you said, a guy who is so different than Davis Bertans, and that's why they're able to utilize both of them. Whether it's, yes, they might use Thomas Bryant obviously to start at center, then because Burton has his height, you might be able to play him at center a bit. You have Hachimura, who's so strong and is such a good rebounder that you actually get that
Quick.
versatility. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So for them, I think it's going to work out good. I really like their starting five too. Like you said, I don't think they got worse. Yeah, Hachimura, hopefully he just keeps getting better. If his point totals improve much more than I even think they will, I think he'll probably top out around 16. If they improve past that, who knows what he'll be ranked in this list, but I do think he'll be a guy who comes close to a double-double in a couple of his years, might even average it one year. And yeah, just a super strong, good power forward. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I think he's in a great spot in Washington. I think they're gonna have a great year this year, and I think the fact that Washington's gonna have a great year is gonna put him more in the spotlight, put him and Brian Burton's more in the spotlight, where they're gonna gain the respect of the media. I don't think they have it right now, but I think his numbers really show out that he's a strong player. By the way, before we jump up to the next player, I did just want to mention we do have one more rookie in the list.
Oh,
Keep watching, guys. Keep watching. He'll
there
be up there. Don't
my
worry.
mistake.
But right after Hachimura, we do get into a lot of more experienced players, more players that we figured would be in these positions. Bertans and Hachimura before the year started. You tell me they're top 25, I would have probably been like, oh, okay, buddy, whatever you say. But these guys are really guys that we expect to be in the top 20. We expect them to be higher. So right here at number 18, we have a guy who should have been higher. He's Aaron Gordon over in Orlando. He's a great player. He does his job. He's always been very consistent at that 15 points per game level. He is considered one of the best players on Orlando, which is a fringe playoff team every year. I'm actually surprised he's this low.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I feel like it's like a lot of the young guys that we've said between the two lists where, oh, if they get to this, if they get to this. I feel like Aaron Gordon, we always wanted that, where we wanted him to have like a Sean Marion year where he was one of the guys who we looked at and we're like, that's a definite all-star. That's a guy who everywhere he shines. That's a guy who on any given night, he can give you 20. He might not do it every night, but on a certain night, he could definitely do it, no problem. And I feel like Aaron Gordon has just struggled to really score at the NBA level. Yes, he's very athletic. He can find a way to drive the net, but he is not the best shooter even to this day, and he hasn't made many strides in the area of improving that either.
But he can dunk the ball so great. Oh, at least he's going to have a great boxing career when he's done. I hear that former dunk champions, they can get in that ring and really move around.
Oh,
You
definitely.
know?
Yeah, I mean, I heard that they're great at executing certain maneuvers, such as a face plant. But other than your Knicks counterpart, Mister, we won't speak about. But Aaron Gordon, yeah, like I said, his shooting ability. His shooting ability, 30% on 3.8 attempts, free
Yeah,
throws,
rough.
67%. I don't understand how a guy who as athletic as he is, who knows he's going to get to the net, doesn't have the ability to hit the free throw at above a 75% rate to this day. Um, and realistically, too, they drafted Jonathan Isaac probably because, yes, neither of them are huge power forwards, and they might not fit that mold. You could even definitely start Gordon at small forward, and
Yeah.
that might have been the goal. But at the same time, I think it's because they think Gordon's replaceable. I think they just eventually wanted to get rid of him, and Isaac's injury unfortunately slowed it down. But I really don't think that they think Aaron Gordon was as good as they hoped he would be. And it's unfortunate because there is a lot of people who thought he would be better as well.
Yeah, I definitely thought he'd be better. I thought he'd be at a higher level by this point. He kind of capped out in the second, third year, and he hasn't improved his shooting. He hasn't improved those offensive maneuvers. If anything, his athleticism has gone down. His
Definitely.
jumping ability's gone down a little bit. He might be regressing, which is sad to say because he's still such a young player. He is. I'll give him this. He is a solid defensive player. He's not the best in the whole league, but he'll play his position. He'll defend fairly well. He's a little better at defending small forwards than he is power forwards. But that's where the Isaac injury kind of comes into play. To me, he has the skill set to be a higher ranked player in this position, a higher ranked player in the league in general. But as much as we are gonna see a lot of younger players on top of him, these are players that they put up numbers that might be similar to him, but they're gonna get better. He's not improving past what he is at this point. At least he hasn't shown us that that's going to happen right now. So until he can show us that he can get better year over year over year, he's going to stick around this area.
Yeah, I mean, if other guys improve, can maybe even fall down on this list if anything. And I
And
mean,
he gets paid way too much to be not in the top 20 at his position.
yeah, and I mean, like you said too, a guy who he might even be regressing in the areas where he was better because it's great that he had 3.7 assists last year. He's able to move the ball a bit now, but is he moving the ball because he can't get to the net as much? Because I mean, again, it's a guy who shot 4 threes last year. 4 threes is enough. And again, he still only shot 30%. So clearly, this is a guy who isn't, like you said, probably driving as much as he used to be. And still to this day, he's not scoring at an efficient rate. So only 14 and a half points less last year. Good rebounder, 7.7. Not we had a few other guys. Good on defense, like you said, but offensive consistency, that alone, it makes him fall down on this list a big amount.
Yep, no, and I'm actually surprised he's not higher than the next person we have on the list. So right here at number 17, we actually have Lauri Markanen, someone who came into the league way too many comparisons to Dirk, which was never fun. Even for someone like Porzingis, it's not fun to get those comparisons because it's so hard to achieve that level of success in the league. He still puts up good numbers, but he's just not that star that we thought he was going to be.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with that more. That even coming into the league myself, I was super excited about Lauri Markkanen. I mean, it seems like an identical player to Porzingis. So much success coming out of Europe, and a guy who really hasn't had a big stride of improvement. He's so high on this list because almost I feel like myself, I feel like to this day that he's going to have this year, like a lot of Bulls fans, where oh, it's going to be the year for Lauri. It's going to be the year for Lauri. Hopefully it is. Hopefully this is the year where he gets maybe 18 or something along those lines because he's still a good shooter. Like he's not a bad shooter. He just
No, by no
hasn't
means.
found any other areas to really shine. Again, going to shooting, a guy 82% from the free throw line. So when he's getting to the net and he's getting foul attempts, he's obviously able to hit it. Guy, we know he could hit the three. 7 foot. If you could have a 7 footer who can stretch floor, like that's a great thing in basketball right now. But he's not the best defender. He's an okay rebounder, 6.3. But again, for a 7 footer, if Andrea Bargnani got so much knack for that, why Corey Marketing can't be much better, right? And we see where obviously Bargnani had a couple great years, but where he ended up ultimately. So for Markkanen's sake, hopefully he could find different areas to improve. Otherwise, yeah, he'll probably just kind of maybe stay around this rate for a few years, get traded, and then who knows what happens to
Or
him.
dropping maybe.
Yeah, but where he's still on this list, like I said, because my hope is that he has a good year.
Like he scored less points last year than he did his rookie year.
Yeah,
He still has the potential to put up great numbers. He's got to capitalize on it. We've got to see. Well, I think for me, it's a lot of with team success. I think if he was on a winning team, he'd still put up similar numbers, but in our minds, he would actually be successful because he's not on a winning team and he's putting up these okay, decent numbers, but he's not winning. We take a lot of that out of him. It takes a lot out of his credibility as a defensive player, out of his lack of trying a little bit harder to try to get those wins. To me, he does resemble a lot like Porzingis, like you said, but he doesn't block like Porzingis. He doesn't defend in the paint like Porzingis. He's not as quick as Porzingis. He can't take people off the block. He doesn't shoot as well. I just said 5 things, and I'm not even talking about his lower rebounding, his lower points per game, his lower assists. He has the tools to get there. He's just got to utilize those tools and actually get there. And with that being said, if he does do this, he does become that star player. He can be a borderline all-star every year if he gets to the level we believe he can be.
Definitely.
And if he is a borderline all-star, then that Chicago team is a much, much, much better team.
Yeah.
They're a playoff team at that point.
Yeah, and the 17 spot's very justified to me though. Like I just feel like he's soft. Like you said, you named a couple elements like it, where he just doesn't like. He feels like a guy that just gets pushed around, who doesn't know how to use his size, who just can't hang in there with even with a guy like Porzingis, who I just feel like would just have his way with him in the post. Doesn't know how to block a good amount of shots. Doesn't know how to use his length other than on the offensive end. So yeah, I mean, yeah, sure he has a great shooting stroke, but other than that, like we said, haven't seen too much. We really need to see more than Lauri Markkanen. If we don't, he's quickly going to find himself lower on the list. I hope for him this year has a good year, and that's why he's so high on the list for now.
Yeah, and he still has the potential to be that better player, so I really hope that he does turn out to be where we think he can.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, before we even get to the next guy saying his name, is how much better the next guy is than Lauri Markkanen right now. Like, just a huge jump, where if Markkanen needs to go up, this is what he needs to be, and it truly is.
Yeah, so right above Lauri Markkanen, we have at number 16, Danilo Gallinari. I don't want to butcher that, but what a great player. What a solid 20 points per game, underrated to the teeth. Nobody's given him respect. He's been on winning teams. He shoots up fantastic. He's tall. He moves around the court. He's got a good IQ. I don't know if it's because he's European that he doesn't get the respect he deserves, or because he had that label of fragile at the beginning of his career. He hasn't missed games the last 2 years. He had a good 2 years where he had a couple minor injuries, one major injury, but he's a great player.
Yeah, I mean, overall, he's super good. Like you said, definitely that might have some factor in it in terms of the fragility. Also, the mold of, I guess he's not necessarily, again, like a true power forward, where if you have the opportunity to play him at small forward, offensively, I really like him. Yes, on defense, he might struggle a bit in terms of speed. But again, in terms of offense, if you could space him out the 4 to the 3, he's super good for that. The same thing, if you space him throughout the 4, he's clearly shown that he's comfortable doing it, and he likes the role a lot. Like the role in OKC where he thrived. I was surprised they actually got rid of him because it looked like a team on the rise, and he looked like such a good fit there. Another great fit in Atlanta, even though they are very cluttered between that power forward, small forward position already. He'll probably continue to find a way to, like you said, put up maybe not 20 if he does again, awesome, but minimum 16. Probably, other than Davis Bertans, the best shooter, probably the best all-around shooter at the power forward position, I would say, in terms of being able to hit the free throw, the 3, the field goals. I'd say Danilo Gallinari is probably the best shooter at the power forward position, which again gets him higher on the list. Very consistent, as you mentioned, year over year, is hovering around 20 points. Even since the year he's entered the league, I believe he might have been 8 or 9 points. Then he jumped up to 15 shortly after, and he hasn't fallen. Like, this is a guy year after year who we know what he could do. He's not a guy, no matter what type of environments it in, he struggles. So yeah, Danilo Gallinari, can't say much good about him. I could even argue that depending on how this year goes, he could probably even be higher than a couple of the guys that are upcoming.
No, I completely agree. It's what hurts him, why he's not any higher, is that he's probably going to be the backup. He's going to be going into a 6-man role where he was starting in OKC. That might hurt him a little bit, but he's going to be able to thrive because he's going to be able to beat these second units tremendously. I just think back of Ibaka when he was in Toronto last year playing off the bench behind Marc Gasol. He was able to come in 10 minutes into the game, and either guys are tired or they're playing against subs. And not every team is built to have a guy like this on the bench. Most teams don't have him on the bench. That's why Davis Bertans has such a great role as well. He comes off the bench. So I can definitely see him thriving in this. Like this will be, I'm pretty sure, his 12th or 13th season. He's averaged over 12 points per game since 2009.
Yeah,
11 years at this point.
that's what I mean. Like he had the jump and he hasn't fallen behind it. I know at all. He just even at the older age keeps getting better. I mean, last year, like this is a guy who again as a power forward, he shot 40, 90, and 43. That's amazing. Like that's so like again, like there's Steve Nash, what was it, the 40, 50, 90 club, and him, Calderon, and a couple other guys are the only guys to make it. And then again, you have a power forward who's shooting 40, 90, and 43. Like he's 7% off from making an exclusive shooters only club. That's amazing. I can't really say much else better than him there, other than like you said, his consistency. Like we also mentioned, maybe he goes down a bit in terms of production just because he is playing in a bench role. But on any given night, if any of the guys get injured, whether it's at small forward, at power forward, we're going to see
At center.
yeah, we're going to see Danilo Gallinari get minutes, and he's definitely going to continue what he's been doing.
Yeah, no, he'll keep doing his job. He's getting paid to do his job.
And now
I
he
would have loved him in Toronto.
yeah, we liked him in OKC as a veteran. He's again gets served that role in Atlanta too. So I feel like that's another thing where people maybe don't think he's as vocal and as like as leader as he is, but maybe like I feel like
Maybe he is. OKC had a great year.
that's what I mean. And Atlanta brought him in for more than the scoring. So
Yeah, no, it's a great future ahead of him. I kind of wish he was starting on whatever team he's in, but he's going to be sitting in a great role in that team.
absolutely.
Right on. Gallinari's probably biggest knocks are his speed at this point of his career. He's moving up and down the court. He's got great defensive IQ, but he maybe doesn't get in front. He's not as physical as a lot of players at that position. The player we have right on top of him, on top of Gallinari, right? As you said, Gallinari was a start of the next level players in this list. The next one we have here, someone who was, again, just like Aaron Gordon, most people would probably consider him a small forward. We have Tobias Harris over in Philly. They got rid of Horford for a reason. He's coming in at power forward. He's going to start every game at power forward. Has Simmons going to be a point guard. They're going to be more mobile. He's a great player to begin with. He gets his 20 and 6, 20 and 7. He gets that even on a team with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. He got that on a team with Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Jimmy Butler. He's a great player. He's probably well undervalued at this spot. He's a former All-Star, I believe. He does his 20 and 7 for 5 years in a row now. He's solid.
Yeah, and I mean it's a guy who, like you said, seems so undervalued probably because of where he's playing today in Philly, where he is the third fiddle. But we often forget that the Los Angeles Clippers, in the years that they were supposed to be down, had a team centered around Tobias Harris for the most part. And that was a pretty good team that went to the playoffs. It was very hard-nosed and almost reminded me of this year's Denver Nuggets in a lot of ways. I really liked Harris on that team a lot more than I do on a team like Philly. Even though I wasn't a huge fan on him on Detroit, for whatever reason, I just loved him in the hard-nosed role with the Clippers. Like you said too, a guy who a lot of people might view as a small forward, but based on the changes that happened, the fact Horford's gone, we know Embiid's going to start, Howard likely won't, and I forget the young kid's name. I don't want to butcher it either because I know it's a European.
Bible.
There, he'll be starting at small forward, and he might not have the most offensive versatility either, but on defense, this was already a kid who I think was sixth or seventh in steals and small forward last year. So that's a guy on his own who I think will get starting minutes definitely, and that's where we're going to see Tobias Harris, just like you said, be in this power forward role. 20 and 7, you can't ask much more for power forward. Hits his free throws, 80% rate. He did have under a steal per game, which I mean, for a guy who's on the floor as much as he is, and where you don't have guys like Embiid who are really doing much in that realm either, you definitely want to pick up a bit. But I mean, again, he's a power forward. You don't necessarily expect 2-3 steals per game by any means. And other than that, I'd say like maybe you want him to take less than 5 attempts per game from three. It's a guy 35%. Usually, you don't want a guy like that shooting 2 or 3. More than 2 or 3 per game. He obviously feels like it might be mandatory because they don't have a lot of 3-point shooting. But like I said, ideally, ideally, I think you want that number coming down to you might want him to cut that 4.9 figure close to in half if I'm Tobias Harris, and I want the best version of him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. He's got to get his shooting in check, considering that's not what he's best at. He does bring a lot of things to the floor. Like this, as compared to every single other person we're going to name in this list, he's been so undervalued his whole career. He's played on 5 teams now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He's been moved around the NBA so much. Nobody else ahead of him has been on more than 2, I believe. It really just goes to show that he might not be of that upper echelon that we really think he is. Like, I thought whenever I was first putting this together, I thought he would be in the top 10 for sure.
Yeah,
because his numbers show us that he is that all-star. He is that player. He can be on that team. Like with the Clippers, he was an all-star. He was that leader. He can be that player. We just undervalue him so much in Philly because we don't even think of him as third best player. We think of him as the 4th best player. We think of him as, well, now the 3rd best player only because Horford had a down year, only because Jimmy Butler left. It's a little, with his skill level, he's like Aaron Gordon, but has put together a much more storied career. He's put together a great, amazing career, and he's only like 3 spots ahead of Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, which is hilarious too, because the Magic had them both, and they chose Aaron Gordon. I mean, yeah, and I mean the funny thing is too, they probably could have got more for Aaron Gordon than they did Tobias Harris, and Tobias Harris still ended up the better player. And I don't think Aaron Gordon will ever be better than Tobias Harris either. Like you said before last year, that 4th best player in the team, especially with Jimmy Butler, and still a guy who still found a way to at least put the ball in the net and do what he had to. A guy 3.2 assists last year, which for power forward is actually pretty good. Only had 1.4 turnovers, which again, pretty good for a guy who clearly is moving the ball around too. Pretty disciplined, just over 2 fouls per game. So obviously going to play consistent minutes for you. So yeah, I think Tobias Harris is a good option for 15. Like you said, based on the 20-7 number, it's almost a surprise it's so low. It's just, again,
if he was playing small forward, he'd be top 10 easily.
Definitely.
Easily.
Yeah, it's just on this
top 5.
Yeah, it's just this list is so deep. Even the guy ahead of him, where last year Tobias Harris is definitely better over the volume of the career. That's just what it came down to for the next guy. And that guy on our list, we have Blake Griffin, the former multiple-time All-Star.
No, you're missing somebody.
Am I?
Uh-oh. How dare he skip someone? How dare he? How dare he? We're missing someone right on top of Mr. Harris.
Who do we have?
A younger player. I'm very happy to say that Griffin's a better player than him. But he's still a great player. Marvin Bagley III.
Marvin Bagley III. My apologies.
Can't forget Bagley. He had a fantastic year last year. I couldn't believe how great of a year he had. He really went to show how he had a high draft pick, and he was very well deserving of his draft pick. He might not be the star right now. He could be that top 5 player in a year or two, though.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, a guy, he did only play in 13 games last year, which definitely does hurt the stock a bit. But we also valued Yusuf Nurkic very high when he only played in 8 games. And I mean, I believe it was Bagley's second year where his first year was very similar to the stats he put up in only those 13 games. And we're going to assume he's obviously going to improve. A guy who is his age and could already get 7.5 rebounds per game when he hasn't even grown into his body fully. Probably a guy who's going to average 9 or 10 for most of his career. Definitely going to improve offensively. Already had 14.5 last year. Yeah, sure, he might not be best at spacing the floor, but like I've said about a few other power forwards, hits an 80% rate. When you could get a guy who gets the net, that's going to grab a ball, go back up, and can hit it 80% of the time, can't ask much more for that, especially if you're a team that wants to go to playoffs or there is going to be so many free throw opportunities. You don't want someone lagging in that area on your team, especially not a key guy, because that's something that teams are going to target, and they're not going to be able to target that in Sacramento, other than if they keep this on Whiteside, obviously, but they're not going to be able to target guys like Marvin Bagley, obviously, because he does have that ability. We'll probably see him develop further in the mid-range, probably even going to continue to develop his three-point ability as well. Like I said, too, he's only going to get stronger, only going to get smarter. Could only say good things for Marvin Bagley, except for the fact that he was drafted over a couple guys who...
I know.
the spot they took up, but at the same time, you take who's best for your team, I guess. I mean, to take Trae Young for the Sacramento Kings and you have De'Aaron Fox,
it wasn't a fit.
Exactly. So,
and I personally think Bagley is going to be a center in this league. I think that Hassan Whiteside is a placeholder for another year or two until Bagley fits into his body. You say he only played 13 games last year. He's going into this year as a 21-year-old.
Yep.
Like, this boy was born in 1999. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He gets 7.5 rebounds per game. He hasn't been in that body that he needs to get those numbers.
Exactly.
He's going to perform very well.
And he's going to have a lot of opportunity to play as well, which is only going to speak to the volume we're going to see. He's a guy on the list who could even have maybe the biggest jump from this year to next year, just based on what he could do. So hopefully Marvin Bagley and the Sacramento Kings, they could get out of the long-setting hump they've had and actually put something together, because we do obviously have a lot of hope for him at the number 14 spot.
Yeah, I know. I hit it right on the nail there. He can have a big jump. Sacramento, if he has a big year, he can be that leader of Sacramento. Him and Darren Fox could be leading the future of Sacramento. They could be a potential playoff team with those two players. So I really do hope he has a great year.
And even think too, like, this is a guy who's outplayed guys like Jabari Parker, who was, if I'm not mistaken, the second overall pick very recently. So clearly he's established himself there. Another guy's outplayed Nemanja Bjelica, who, again, very, very good shooter. Shot 4.5 threes last year, hit at a 41% rate. And still, if they had the ideal rate, they would rather Marvin Bagley in there, because they know how good of a player Marvin Bagley is.
Yeah, he put up 14 and 7 throughout his career so far. I know it's only 2 years and only about 70 games, but he's only averaged 25 minutes per game either way. If you do on his per 36 number, he's already doing over 10 boards per game. His minutes per game are only going to go up, and I don't think his efficiency is going to go down with it.
He only had 25 minutes per game last year.
Yeah,
I know he only played
averaged 25. See, he started 6 games last year, played in 13, averaged 25.7. 0.4 more than the year before, where he put up 15 points per game and even more boards.
And who knows if it would have continued, but I mean, he was already seventh in offensive rebound average-wise. So, like, if he stayed at that rate for 82 games and he's playing 25 minutes per game and he's 7th in offensive rebounding, he's going to be a force down low.
Which is what Sacramento needs. They need him to turn into that player.
Miles Turner, learn. Offensive rebound. If you haven't seen my rant, please check it out.
Miles Turner, go to Marvin Bagley School of Rebounding. Learn, yeah. So, but as we were talking right before Marvin Bagley, we almost slipped in his name. He's much more of an all-star player, much more of what we consider a top power forward in this league. Hell, there's been a team built around him for the last since LA. We have Blake Griffin, number 13. How fucking embarrassing, Blake.
Yeah, and I mean, it's almost like center. Like, there was guys who were low too, were such good players, where it is so deep. Like, just scrolling through the list, looking at it, it's like I'm trying to re-justify it, but it's like, yeah, you know what? I would pick any of these guys over Blake Griffin right now, easily. Let alone even on a good year, maybe Griffin goes up a spot or two, but like, we know what he does, and he's like Aaron Gordon. He's lost most of that ability. He's not the showman that we saw the first couple of years, where get out of the way, it's Blake Griffin. Like, yeah, of course he can get to the net, but I mean, I don't know how many highlights we've seen of Blake Griffin over the last 2 years. I can't. Like, maybe we could count them on our hands. He's a guy who's tried to transition into more of a shooter, and even though he hasn't done it awfully, last year was very, very bad. I know he
very, 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 very bad.
Yeah.
6 attempts per game, 24%.
Yeah, and it's not like he was better anywhere else either, right? Like, he struggled to shoot field goals wise. He was actually 92nd in field goal percentage. I know, obviously, he didn't play much of the year and he had a lot of injuries. But usually when we're talking about guys who don't do well, usually when we're talking about guys that have done so well in a short amount of time played, it's because they played that short amount of time. This is a guy who did awful in the short amount of time that he played. So I don't really know why Blake Griffin regressed so much last year, again, other than the injuries that it could have been. But yeah, it was just I can't say anything good about last year. I mean, like I said, 92nd in field goal percentage, like you said, 24% from threes, and he actually took the 9th most attempts per game out of any power forward. And he was hitting a fourth of them. Like that's just a waste to your team at that point. Didn't shoot you shoot 76% or 77 from the free throw line, which isn't bad, but only like it's not great. And to be honest, like the only people in our top 10 with less attempts at the free throw line than Griffin per game were Giannis and Randall. So like it's not even like Griffin's getting to the line a lot anymore. So like if he does anything like he did this year, like I don't even want to rank him next year, honestly.
So I think that he still got into the 13th because of his career he's had.
Definitely.
If we're looking at last year alone, I'm putting Carmelo Anthony as a better player last year, as a better player for his team last year.
Definitely.
Derrick Rose was a better player for Detroit last year.
Absolutely.
He hurt his team.
Yep.
But with that being said, he has we know he has the ability to still be a top 5 power forward in this league, to still be a top 20 player in this league. The year before, he was averaging 24 and a half, doing it with the center in there, so his floor spacing was limited. We know he can't shoot the three that well to begin with. And when he did put up 24 points with Andre Drummond beside him, putting up 20 almost,
Yep.
and 15 rebounds. I think that the ultimate move is to put Blake Griffin at center. They're bringing in Jeremy Grant, put him at power forward. They already have run it back with Derrick Rose. They just picked up DeLon Wright out of Memphis, who's been a great player doing Casey in the past. I think it's going to bring a lot more speed to that team, a lot more movement. And I think that Griffin can actually surprise us. You're talking about not ranking him. I'm talking about ranking in the top 10 next year. If he goes anywhere close to what he has for his career, anywhere close to his career numbers, he's a better player than the next couple people are going to name. Sure, the next couple people we're going to name outside of maybe Kevin Love are of the younger variety who are getting better every year, and Griffin's only getting worse every year, I guess. But he's not that old to be ineffective in this league. He's only 31. He can still be effective. He can essentially be turned into that Love player. It's hard because Detroit's built around him. That team's built for him to be a star, but he's not the star player. He showed last year he pulled the Draymond Green. He played horrible. But if he can get anywhere close to what he was before, he can easily pop back in the top 10. He can be ahead of players like Siakam, Sabonis, Collins. He's proven to be better than those players in the past. He can get there. But if he plays like he played last year, you're right. I'm not ranking him either.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's what it is. Like before we even got into it, it's solely based off the career. Like a guy who over his career puts up, I think it's 21 and 7 or 22 and 7, and that's including his rookie year, sophomore year, when obviously a bit lower consistently though. He's a guy who has been that 24 and 8, kind of around that very, very top
You
5.
want to know what he had his rookie year?
What do you have? I believe over 20.
Blake Griffin rookie year had 22 and a half and 12 rebounds per game. He also put up 3.8 assists per game.
Yeah, and that's was after a year that he sat for an entire year too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I mean, we definitely know we don't have the old Blake Griffin. Like we said, we know that it's a different version. Like you said, if he could put up that 24 and whatever per year again,
24 and 8, 24 and 7, 22
absolutely,
and 8.
absolutely, this guy continues to find himself probably in a top 10 route. But yeah, if like maybe it was the injuries, even the games he played, maybe it was nagging, and that's how it kind of ended up. But like you can't have a repeat if he's done, which like we never know, it could be possible. It's gonna be shown very quickly, and he's
Yeah.
definitely, like we
That
said,
team's going to fall apart quick if
definitely,
he's not on top of his game.
definitely they need Blake Griffin of 2 years ago, or that Detroit team is gonna be probably the worst in the East, honestly.
But if they get that Blake Griffin from 2 years ago, they get Jeremy Grant from the playoff last year, they get Derrick Rose from last year, that team is looking bright.
What if they get Chicago Derrick Rose?
Oh, if they get Chicago Derrick Rose, now we're talking about contenders.
There we go.
But moving on from Blake Griffin, sad to see her that low. Prove us wrong, Blake. I don't know if you're watching this. You probably go at home, you watch these videos, you cry yourself to sleep at night. You go, I only hit 22% of my threes. And then you're sitting there being like, wait, I hit 24. But still don't be proud of that. So, but either way, moving on from old man Blake Griffin, we have the next person on this list, much younger, coming in. And if you would have told me before last year that Blake Griffin is a better player than we have at number 12, Jaren Jackson Jr., this is one of those situations where I would have laughed at you and went, yeah, Jackson's a good kid. Haha, good joke, buddy. But no, he had a fantastic year in Memphis. Memphis had a great year overall, and he was a big part of it.
Yeah, and that's a guy again who was drafted in that, I believe, famous draft with guys like Luka Doncic, Trae Young. But he's really justified this selection that he was. A guy who between the 2 years has improved, already almost at 20 per game. And like you said, he had a huge impact on Memphis. He was a huge
Yep.
reason that they went as far as they did, and their success is really going to depend on him. Really, how good they do. We spoke about Brandon Clarke earlier. Like you said about maybe one of them going to center in the future. Who knows if that's possible? There'll probably be some type of position change. Who knows? Jackson Jr. shoots so good, he could even end up a small forward. You said very unlikely, but it's a guy who doesn't
Never
rebound
know.
too good, right? He 4.7 last year, was 42nd in rebounding for power forward. But I mean, his shooting, especially for a guy who's a four, is just among the top. And for Memphis, I mean, you couldn't have made a better pick, like I said.
No, he fills the holes that they needed him to fill. He shoots the ball. He doesn't get rebounds, but they don't need him to get rebounds. Jonas Valanciunas does that job for them. They have players that have a great rebounding ability. He's not out there putting up 2 rebounds per game. He's still getting a 4 per game. It's not great, but like you say, he sits at the 3-point line. He's not getting offensive rebounds because he's not in the paint. But he puts up 6.5 per game. He hits it at 40%. He is a much. He could go and become a shooter, someone like Davis Bertans, someone like Gallinari, who can be a consistent 40% 3-point shooter, putting up 5, 6, 7 attempts per game. But he also brings a certain amount of speed to his game. He brings a lot of. He's very young. He brings a lot of effort. He's a high energy player. He moves the court very good. He's defensively already a better player than Gallinari or Bertans, but he's already almost shooting as good as him. I didn't know he was going to have this good of a year. Whenever I was looking at this, I knew Memphis played good. I knew they were an undervalued team. I didn't realize this much. Great year he had.
Yeah, I mean, he was also third in blocks among power forwards with 1.6,
Right.
which kind of alludes to the fact, too, where, like, yeah, he might not grab a lot of rebounds per game, but clearly he has the athleticism. Clearly he's not shy in the paint if he is already third amongst blocks as in his second year, right?
Yep.
With that being said, yeah, his field goal percentage did drop a bit year to year. His free throw percentage did drop year to year. But those are things that usually are little, like, you're going to find your kind of consistent area where it is. And he's probably he'll probably find a more steady improvement down the line. That's not something I'm too concerned about. The main thing I'd be concerned about with Jaren Jackson is he is very aggressive on the defensive end. He was the only player with more.
Fouls.
Yeah, he was the only player with more than one game played at power forward. So that had more than 4 fouls per game. So that's something that needs to change. Again, the only other guy only had one game played, so he had 4 fouls that game. And that was
That
it.
shows an experience, though. That shows an
Yeah,
experience. He was
definitely.
only 20 years old when he started last year. He was 21 when he finished. When I was 21, let's just tell you, I wasn't on TV playing basketball.
Let alone at a discipline level. So yeah, I mean, for like you said, 40% from three. Erdy, he actually shot 6.5 attempts last year. So like if he
Yeah.
could hit that number year over
He's a
year,
volume shooter. He's great.
exactly. Like if he hits that year over year, I mean, like I said, you can't ask much more from Memphis. That's a team who looks very deep as well. They've drafted really good. Looks really good for them. Really bright future too. And Jaren Jackson, I wouldn't be surprised if he moves up on this list next year as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised as well. There's a few people that are still younger that are still improving. I would be really sad if he went up one more spot though, because to me, the person we have one more spot at number 11, to, to me, he's on another planet. Maybe it's just his career he's put in. Maybe it's his championship pedigree. But we have Kevin Love coming at number 11. He was actually tied with Jaren Jackson Jr. in our rankings, but he won the ultimate tiebreaker. That's so low for a guy of his pedigree, like his career, his longevity. He still puts up the great 17 and 8 points, 17 and 8 every single year. He doesn't need to be that star player. I think he just gets overshadowed in Cleveland because they're not a winning team and they have all these young players.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and even admittedly, this is a guy you had in your top 10, and probably most people do. If anything, it's my fault he's outside of it because I actually had him ranked under Jaren Jackson at the 13th spot, and I do have someone else ahead of
Don't
him,
worry, Kevin, I got you.
which some people could argue is probably not a better overall player than Kevin Love, but again, based on the year that I think is to come, might do a bit better. But yeah, Kevin Love at this position. I mean, if you said who just as a player is better, he's probably actually one of the best players all around. This is a guy who, no matter what team he's on, he finds his role, he knows it, and he develops into it. Like I believe I was speaking to you the other day. There was an interview I seen with Kevin Love where he talked about how different the transition in Cleveland was with LeBron and Kyrie because growing up he always learned to start playing from the inside out where he would get his game, he'd be down low, hit a couple easy shots, whatever, get the rhythm.
Move outwards.
Exactly. Versus when he went to Cleveland right away, it was shoot the corner, hit your three, get that in. And it was weird to him. And we obviously saw him drop a bit in production where some people, like you said, might have lost their respect for him as a high level player. But I mean, this is a guy who can do more than just score and rebound as well. Still one of the best rebounders in the league,
Yep.
let alone at his position. A guy who has the ability to put up 20 and 10 any year. A guy who could shoot the free throw 80%, 85% any year. He shot 85%
90%.
last year. Exactly. 3 point could shoot anywhere between 38 to 40 any year as well. He can
Going
pass
back
the
to
ball.
rebounding, he was on a team with Andre Drummond and Tristan Thompson, and he still put up 10 rebounds per game.
Yeah, just under 9.8. So, and
Like, he's not even playing center.
no, exactly. And it's just, he's great at boxing out. That's one thing Kevin Love is probably one of the best at in the league. He's a great at boxing out. Just fundamentally, like I said, Kevin Love is just so good. There's so little that Kevin Love doesn't understand about the game of basketball. And that's why it's a shame he's so low. It's
He
really,
plays it the way it should be played. He's
yeah,
such a professional.
exactly. It's really just, I think, the fact also that he's at the point where he's coming out of his prime, and the year he had last year, we're probably going to see reminiscent of versus all of the guys ahead of him. They're pretty much 20 and 10, if not more guys, and that's just what.
He's still 18 and 10, but he does everything else right.
Yeah,
That's what gets me on for Kevin Love. He does everything right, the way it should be done. He's
definitely.
the Chris Paul of power forwards.
Yeah, and like I said, I agree with every argument there. I completely take the blame for him being outside of it because I could say nothing but good things for Kevin Love. And there's some bad things that could be said about some other players. It's really just the fact of the role that they're going to be on with the team. Like you said, Kevin Love is kind of in that more leadership role where, you know what, we might even see him go down to 15 points and something this year because he's playing second fiddle not only to Drummond, but Colin Sexton coming up, a Corum.
He'll give up those shots for the betterment of the team.
Exactly, versus a lot of other players won't, where it makes them look better and it might
Blake
get,
Griffin,
yeah, and it might
Blake,
get,
we're talking to you.
well, I'm more referring to the guy who we're gonna speak next to on this list, where most people would argue as a player, again, even myself, career-wise, Kevin Love is a much better player than the guy we have next.
Oh, I